Well, AFL footballer Harry O'Brien has shocked the sporting community by revealing his depression and suicide.
Probably one of my lowest ebbs too, because I was clinically depressed and really struggling with it.
Actually needing to step back from footy and felt really lost, and I guess like I couldn't see the end of the tunnel. I couldn't see a way of getting out of this wreck that I was in.
I was getting to the stage where I was getting a bit, I suppose you could say a little bit suicidal.
The AFL has declared enough is enough.
My name's Mandy Ruddock-Hudson. I'm a lecturer at La Trobe University and also the Wellbeing Manager at the AFL Coaches Association. Depending on the athlete themselves, the performance day, whether that be a football game or a swimming event or a hockey match, etc., can be really stressful for individuals if they're not able to manage their anxiety and if they're not able to manage their arousal levels. But then also off the field as well, once again depending on the individual, how are they able to cope with losing, how are they able to cope with negative feedback and criticism. So I would actually say the pressures both on and off the field are probably as equally as important as each other. The AFL Coaches Association is the governing body for the coaches. We have approximately 180 members Australia-wide. And as an organisation, we've really tried to push the importance of wellbeing. AFL coaching is a highly stressful workplace environment. As you would know, there's numerous pressures that are involved, not just win-loss, but there's also the media scrutiny, there's the pressures from within the club, there's pressures from outside the club, and there's also personal pressures.
Scott got in there for the tackle. Hannah recovers. Dean crunched down by Swass, and he's not getting up in a hurry, Peter Dean. That's great finals football by Wayne Swass.
Pretty solid blow there from Wayne Swass, and this one really could unbalance Carlton a little bit. Nothing untowards about that one. Message was pretty clear. The trainers are saying that Peter Dean is obviously in loads of trouble.
I was living a lie, spending all of my waking hours making sure that everybody else around me thought that I was okay.
Well, obviously AFL is a high-pressure environment, isn't it? And what we're asking these young men to do, I guess, as part of that environment is, in some cases, doesn't necessarily mirror general society. So an example of that is potentially relocation, and maybe some of the isolation that comes with that, having to build new networks. In addition to that, I guess at the end of the day, they're elite athletes as well. So they're obviously very driven, and it's a performance-based industry. So there are a lot of stresses that are attached to that.
Depression has been, 100 million people globally have been suffering from depression at some stage in their life. So it's quite recognised now. It's really important to identify the differences between depression and just feeling low though. In society, generally we all feel low at some stage, but with depression, it's when signs and symptoms have been present for at least 2 weeks, and these signs and symptoms can be anywhere from emotional disturbances, having difficulty sleeping, a change in appetite, and actually feeling really withdrawn from society.
I used to work in a mental hospital, and they were more or less lepers them days. And these days, particularly football and sports, they really try to look after that type of thing, you know.
is a high performance industry. It's also a high opinionated industry as well, and certainly there's members of the media, that traditional media, that play a role there, and naturally social media is another platform in which I guess there's noise for players, and I think that in years gone by, where it was probably limited more to the newspaper and these sorts of areas, it was probably potentially a lot easier for players to be able to switch off from it. But now with television and social media and that rolling news cycle, it's a lot harder to evade some of that commentary.
Oh, I played football for a lot of time, and some people are really badly injured through football, and but I suppose the footballers of today do have a lot more psychological thing, because the pressures of football is incredible for when I played.
I would say around October every year it's quite a stressful time for our members. Coaching contracts can be quite short and therefore there's a lot of job insecurity. Jobs are also based on win-loss ratio as well, so it can be a really challenging time for coaches. Once again, as an organisation, not my area of expertise, but they do provide assistance to coaches in the lead up to those who are out of contract, and obviously we do provide assistance to those who have unfortunately been sacked. I would anticipate that sure, a coach would go through self-doubt at some stage, as does everybody, whether it be a student at university or someone in the workplace.
At the moment, we're going around and doing what we refer to as club visits. So we do this twice a year, and it's a great opportunity now that the CBA has been resolved to be able to, I guess, take a whole range of issues back to players and essentially get them to tell us where the key priorities lie going forward and how to shape our strategy. So, as I said before, as a players' association, we serve to serve the players, and they'll essentially, I guess, dictate in terms of where the priorities and that strategic objectives need to be positioned going forward.
I think mental health and wellbeing has evolved dramatically over the years. In the past, potentially seeking help, especially from a male perspective, may be frowned upon, or there was a stigma associated with it. I think football as a general community has done an outstanding job to highlight the importance of mental health and wellbeing, and they're actually now looking at mental health as being something positive and not so much being something negative.
If anything, we're seeing, witnessing some real positivity in the sense that we've got a lot of players, this year alone, for example, that have put their hand up and been quite public with some of the struggles that they've faced. But if you sort of bring it back to society, I guess, there has been a history anyway around the stigma associated with mental illness, and I guess some of the older sort of mentalities that exist around potential weakness or I guess the sort of shame involved in sort of aligning yourself with that particular illness. So we're doing a lot of work to overcome that, obviously, as a society, and AFL footballers are playing a key role in that regard too.
I am aware that our organisation is looking into other coaching codes, the NBA, for example, the Premier League, etc., to see what other sports are doing. It's like any other elite environment. If you've got a group of athletes, of course you're going to look at athletes overseas and sports overseas. So from a coaching perspective, we're always trying to improve our services and improve as an organisation. So most definitely looking at what other coaching codes are doing too.
Some of them, I'm sure, don't feel as comfortable being public with some of the struggles or the challenges that they're facing. But for those who are, I guess, and particularly if they do have a little bit of public profile as well, who are comfortable in doing so and coming forward, they can certainly play a significant role in overcoming that, I guess, the challenges that the general community face in terms of modelling, I guess the courage of coming forward and the benefits of doing so.
I did undertake some research a number of years ago looking at AFL players and how they actually coped when they were injured. And it was really interesting looking at long-term injuries, chatting to players who were delisted due to injuries or their career was terminated because of an injury. I think the AFL as a whole is really good in rallying around its people, so whether it be the Scott brothers or any other coach, any other player, etc. Huge support is always provided in unfortunate circumstances, and in the past we have seen some of those circumstances in the public arena. Unfortunately, yes, we have learned a lot. It's made us more aware of the potential issues that may or may not happen. It was almost like a turning point from an organisational perspective, and based on that, a number of strategies have been put in place. The wellbeing survey has been put in place, and more services are now available to our coaches.